bringing you the best in country and Irish music. This is your station, irishcountrymusicradio.com.
There you have it. That is Mr. Johnny Carroll and Come Dancing. And, well, Johnny is ready to come talking. Johnny, how are you going on? Are you well?
Well, Seamus, I'm great. I'm great to hear from you.
It's great to hear from yourself as well. The man...
No jokes now, Seamus, please. No jokes. There's no madcaps tonight.
No. Well, it's hard to mime, you see, doing mime act on the radio anyway, you see, so...
you did a good job of it. You were doing a good job of this. So you're keeping well anyway?
Not too bad, especially, although this weather now wouldn't inspire you, you know, yourself.
It's very depressing, and I tell you, it's as you know, I live here in Galway, just outside Salt Hill, and it's been a ferocious couple of nights. But fortunately, we're not as bad as this is down south, down in Bandon and Skibbereen and Cork and stuff like that. Watching the news there, it was pretty bad all day.
Oh yeah, well, you see, it always gets the bad weather around. Down along that area of the coast and all. Like, I suppose the nearest place to you is the good old US of A. So naturally,
correct. Correct.
You can't even plant a few trees or anything there.
The business people are suffering terribly down around there. Like, you know, I've good friends down there in Bandon and Skibbereen and all, and in business there. And God, I'm watching the news there tonight. God love them. They've had a tough one, but sure, we'll have to try and survive like the rest of us.
The will, unfortunately. Now, you're the man with the most famous trumpet, I'd say, in the country.
It's pure gold, Seamus, pure gold. The man with the golden trumpet. Well, I tell you, it has served me well over the last 62 years on the road. So actually, would you believe it? It's the third trumpet I've used. I've worn out two of them already, and this one will wear me out. Let me know more.
Well, I was actually just going to ask you, was it the original trumpet? But no, you've answered that question for me straight away. Anyway,
I couldn't. No, because I tell you why, Seamus. Like you know, when I started off there over 60 years ago in the band business, and you'd be paying 1,000 or 1,500 people a night and playing 4 hours a night. The sweat used more a hole in the bell and things like that. So you have to change them fairly often. You just bore a hole. Would you believe it or not? It cut through it after playing all them nights and sweating and stuff.
I suppose it's salt, yeah.
I don't sweat as much anymore, so this one will last me a long time.
Well, I tell you this much, I have seen you and I've had the pleasure of working with you over the years as well. But
yes.
I've always been fascinated. Like, now with the madcaps now, we do a lot of running around and jumping around. But then Johnny Carroll comes on, and he makes an appearance, and all you hear is Johnny, the music starting up, and next thing Johnny's walking across the backs of chairs, and he's making and there's people.
Gonna be good to the days. Yeah. I sure loved it, and you know, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again. I'm probably too old to do it now, but it's been good to me after all these years, and I've met lovely people on the road, and fellas like yourself, and had their fun on the cup of tea and the sandwich, and that's what it's all about, you know, meeting nice people.
And how did you get started? Now, when you say you're 62 years on the road, so you were a young chap when you were starting out.
I was a young chap, and sure, they're making up my age now. There, sure. I was only 13 years of age when I started. I started originally with playing a brass band at Castlereagh when I was very, very young. Castlereagh and County Roscommon brass and reed band at probably maybe 11 years of age or something. Like I got in there playing a cornet with them, and then my dad, Lord Berson, bought me a trumpet and blowing the old trumpet, and there was a little band started out the road for me called the Premier Races at the time, and they had the trumpet player with them. They're all older than me, these guys now. well into their teenagers. I was only a young fella, 13, but they had some appeared, immigrated, went to America, and they asked my father could I join them for a few months during the summer, because they were only doing local gigs around the place, very small little gigs, and I joined them, and actually I think it was May 1958, thinking of going back to school, which I did after that. But I thought I'd have a good day job and work in a shop or get a job somewhere in Castlereagh. But 62 years later, I'm still at it. Haven't left the road. So we became very, very popular, and all over the place. We toured England, America, and Scotland and Wales. We were very popular in Ireland. Probably we were in the top 20 showbands in Ireland right through the 60s. And I just loved the business. And you know, I wouldn't say I fought with my parents, but I would have a good argument to sort of let them allow me to stay at the business, because they didn't want me to stay at it. They wanted me to leave and, you know, take a job in town, doing something in Castlereagh, and I persuaded them that I liked it so much. And the few shillings was coming in at home. It was very, very handy for the parents too. So I was very fortunate that I stuck with it and made a living out of it all these years.
And of course, you, if I'm not mistaken, will be the subject of a table quiz question, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be right?
I think it would. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah, I think well, I'm not common. What's common when I go and play centre field in 3 All-Irelands and I never touched the ball or kicked the ball. So that was JC here, because I had the honour of playing on three All-Irelands at Croke Park with the RTM boys band on 3 occasions. And 2 of the occasions when Galway won the hurling finals, and I forget who. The other was a football final I played. Could have been, I don't know who was playing at the time, Cork or somebody else. But yeah, I played at Sisterfield in Croke Park, never touched the ball. So it was a minute honour for me to be able to do that, you know, because when you have 80,000 people looking down, and then you have another couple of 100,000 around the world watching in different areas, from New York to Belmullis. But it was lovely, and I was, you know, even people still talk about it to this day. You know, the guy that plays centre field in Croke Park with the RTM boys band which year. So that was the subject of a table quiz for years. Caught a many of them out.
I'm sure it did. And so you were with the Premier Aces, and you went out on your own after that then, Johnny, or what happened after?
Well, what happened, Seamus, I started with the Premier Aces, and we became, as they say, blowing me out, we became hugely popular. Like we were joined by a very famous singer later on in the years, well, in the middle 60s, by a man called Houston Wells. Houston was an English man. He had a big hit in England, but only the heartaches. There's gold in the mountain, and he was an English charter, so he toured Ireland, and he just loved Ireland. Lovely man he was, and he decided that he wanted to come to Ireland. So our manager, who was Con Hines at the time, and Con Hines would have been one of the big promoters. He would have owned all the big major ballrooms, all the associated ballrooms like Templemore and Roseland and Moore. So he had a chain of ballrooms, just like the Reynolds chain. But he joined us, and sure, it really took off from that then. Like, Houston was a huge star, and Houston left, and we were joined in by a great guy after that called Shea O'Hara. Shea was the country singer with Doc Carroll and the Royal Blues for years. And when Shea decided to leave for whatever reason, he went to Australia, and we still continued on with the Premier Race, and we're doing good business. But a few of us, well, during them times we toured quite a lot that time. Like, as you know yourself, Seamus, in Ireland that time, for the 7 weeks later, there was no dancing whatsoever. So, like, you had guys in the business. You had 700 showbands, and a lot of the guys married with young families and no work for 7 weeks. So we all had to take the boat on Ash Wednesday and head for England. And sometimes you'd have 200 or 300 bands over in England for 7 weeks of Lent, up and down the motorways from England, Scotland, and Wales, all over the place. Hard going. And when you say take the boat, you'd have to take the cattle boat. We used to take it from the North Wall there. And when I say the cattle boat, they would load on our wagons on a big crane up in the air there and drop them down. And underneath there'd be about 300 or 400 or maybe 500 head of cattle getting off in Birkenhead. And, you know, there was no berths. You sat up all night, young fellas sitting up there on a rough night. If it was a rough night, the cattle were moving underneath, so you got no sleep, only sick. So you doctors Liverpool at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, got the boat off and headed for London to play the night. So you had to be hardy, but you had to love what you do, what you're doing also. So there were tough times but good times, you know.
Yeah, because the boat, you say, there was no comfort involved, and the vans, or the wagons, as you were saying there, the bandwagons, there was no comfort in them either. Like, you were lucky to have a heater, you were lucky to have a wind in them.
You'd have 7 or 8 guys, you know, like sardines in there, and sitting beside one another, and that's the way it was. But a lot of fellas broke up, the bands broke up, both personalities clashed and all that. And then, what people don't realise, you had 7 weeks of Lent without any dancing in Ireland. But you also had 3 weeks of Advent just before Christmas. There's no dancers. There was 10 weeks of the year, but there was no dancer for professional musicians in the country. Like if you were what we call a pro band at the time that you're dependent on it as you're living. I know there was 700 bands, but maybe 2/3 of them would have been semi-pro. They would have other jobs, so they weren't really dependent on it. But the guys that were dependent on it had to immigrate for 6, 7, 8 weeks of the year and leave their families at home. That's what we did. And, you know, to get the work, you could be in Scotland, you could be in Wales, you could be in London, you could be in Birmingham. So it's up and down the motorway non-stop for the 7 weeks. If you were lucky enough to get the work, it all depends on who you win for. We were fortunate. We worked for the Burns Group, the people that owned the big circuit there. They had the Galtimore and Cricklewood and the Harp in New Cross and the Hibernian and Fulham and the Harp in Manchester, in Birmingham and in places. So we worked for that group. So they kept us going. But you know something, after when you asked me that, well, after that then I started, we a few of us in the band got a bit restless, and when the lead singers left, so we went out and around. We started a band called Murphy and the Swallows, a girl called Margaret Murphy, and Noel Carty manages, who now manages Lyndon Shine and Johnny Martin and people like that. And Noel managed us for years, and then I formed a band called Magic and the Magic Band, and Magic would have been the guy with the lit-up suit. He was the big lit-up suit coming out of a box on the stage. That was huge for us for years. Just a sort of a semi-pop band, country band at the time. Great singer. And I suppose that lasted for a number of years, and then I went out on my own. I got this idea, the ballrooms were closing, Seamus, and the drink was there was no drink, but the door ballrooms were closing down. Then you had a 7 or 8 piece band, and you're trying to keep managers happy and keep publicity and records out, which became impossible. So a lot of people were going to the hotels that time and the lounges to play in the band. So I decided to go out on my own and take a chance with the trumpet and try and get a recording contract, which I did with Stoney Cassidy and Harmonic Records at the time, which was Twitcher Class. So I never looked back from that. That's going back many, many years, you know. Yeah,
and of course the trumpet, as you say, has served you very, very well over the years.
Well, it has. You see, what people don't realise, well, maybe they do that, it was a very difficult one, because I was a young guy at 13 when I started with the Premier Race at 13 and a half, and I had no other trade, like, you know. I mean, that's why my parents threatened so often to take me off the road and put me in, so I'd have a trade if anything happened. But unfortunately, I say fortunately they didn't, because I kept going. But I knew that I had to sort of stick at music in some aspect to make a living for my family. So I gone out of the trumpet with the band. When I finished with the bands, and I started Johnny Carroll with a 1 or 2 piece band with the man with the golden trumpet. I got this idea coming over in Donegal one night. I think we're after having a very bad night, far up in Donegal. Was coming home with very little money and things not good in the back of the wagon with guys' personalities. So I said, I got to get out of this, you know. So I just started. I said to myself, I said, look at it. Ackerbig had Stranger on the Shore. He was big at the time, and then you had Phil Coulter just come out of the top with a CD that time. Tranquility it was called, and long before that you had a guy called Eddie Calvert. So he had a big hits at home, My Papa and Cherry Pig. And I said, I wonder if I started playing the trumpet and record, would it work? So of course everybody laughed at me. I went to a few record companies. Now, do you think? And well, I said I do, but I was never released here. Playing the trumpet, that wouldn't work. But anyway, I persuaded Johnny Cassidy, and make a very long story short, we went into record one of the biggest recording shows in the country called Windmill. That's where, as you probably know, that's where U2 and all the big bands recorded. But the record company put the money into me. I came up with the idea of a Twitcher Class and the tunes. And Noel Keelan, the Mercy, and we had the RP orchestra and strings and all top session in Dublin. They did a very, very big lavish production behind my first album, and all my albums actually. So I took off, and then I just kept banging away and bringing up more albums and making more phone calls and getting work in, because that's what you had to do. But and you know, it's worked for me. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. My point is, it wasn't easy to sell a trumpet player at that time.
No.
Then I realised I had to start singing a bit to sort of break it up. So, like in the shows, well, I had two guys with me, but they did the singing. I didn't maybe say. What I really started doing then, Seamus, was in my shows. It was most of the show band material and some of the old Lynn Miller stuff, and Richard James Last and the old waltzes and all that. So I was mixing it up with them. Then, you know, you got the commercial gigs in when you did that. When I said the commercial gigs, the dances and whatever, you know, so nearly all dance halls I played at the time and big cabaret lounges, which was, see, the record would have done that for me to sort of made the name for myself, so I was able to get into these places. And just plowed away all the time, and still plowing away, Seamus.
And doing very well for yourself too, has to be said.
Well, you know, I like right now, unfortunately, things we never thought we'd see this happening in our lifetimes, but it doesn't affect me, thankfully, that much right now, because I'm retired, and well, not retired. I thought I retired many years ago. I'm 62 years after. We had a big 60th here in Galway 2 or 3 years ago for my retirement. But the phone rang the following day, and something did. Mostly what I've been at in recent years is I'm doing some tours abroad, and I've been doing some concerts. As you know, I've worked with you several times. You know, worked with Billy Morrissey on all these tours and different people and concerts all over the country. So that's what I've been at mostly for the last 3 or 4 years, and I had a lot of stuff in. I was much going to Scotland and this month, and was much going to Portugal and Spain, and a little thing in Florida. So that's all gone by, and I know will it ever come back again for me, because I've said to somebody today, I probably might be too old again. again things come back again to normality. Hopefully not. Hopefully, but I'm still doing a bit of recording, as you know. I have a new record out there. You've just played it, thankfully. And
dancing, yeah.
I've stuff in the pot. So I suppose really, it's in your genes. It's like being in a circle, you know. That's the life, and that's been my life all my life, and I'd be sort of lost without it now. And I just keep plodding away. But I think one of the main things that sort of keeps me going, that I want to still stay in the business. As Seamus, over the last 60 odd years, I've met the most wonderful people in the world through music. You know, I've met friends all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. And especially here in Ireland, I've met great people that I can call my friends. And I would know from comments, I guess, on Facebook there when I would take out a new album or whatever it was, and people say, God, Johnny, it's good to see you're still at it, and we met you such a time, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I think that if I ever stopped playing and stopped doing the little bit of touring that I'm doing, I would never meet these people again, and I would hate to think that, you know. And that's the one good thing about it. I've met marvellous people through music. And it says one of the families listeners tonight now referring to that to be the Cleans down there in Ferns. Joe Clean down there, and his good wife Tina, and of course Kit herself. They were great friends of mine. I never played in any part of Wexford that I wasn't invited back to the house with an old cup of tea there by the big stove. I kept for the night and fed. Well, what more could you want? So no other than the kid for the cup of tea and a bit of brown bread.
Yeah, it's hard to beat a bit of brown bread, especially.
Well, I tell you, when you're 150 miles from home on a cold winter's night and somebody does that for you, you appreciate it. and a bad wagon of 4-ball tires. You put your head down.
I'd be very much appreciated.
Every inch of that county down there, probably every county in Ireland, every field in Ireland. The thing that I noticed most, you know, when I'd be travelling around, I'd go to cities or towns, big towns, you'd look in and say, my God, I remember playing in the Marquee there in 19, whatever it to be, and now there's maybe a church there, a school there, whatever it may be, or like a shopping centre or something. It's amazing the way times have changed. But time goes on, and that's it, with lovely memories of people that I've met in the business. Yeah,
you mentioned the Marquees there. They were a great, back in the 50s, 60s, I mean, they were huge. The Marquee.
They were incredible. You know, I suppose a lot of people say, going back to the 60s, they probably think, or even before that, when we were younger going to school, that the summers were better, which they were too, like, you know. I remember coming from school getting the summer holiday in the bare feet, like for the summer holidays, and the tar coming up through your toes, like you wouldn't do that anymore. And I wasn't the only one. A lot of my friends were like that. Tar would be melting on the road for the summer. He'd be out there in the bare feet. But the marquees, I remember, like we'd come back from England after doing the 6 weeks over there, and we'd come back in Holy Week, and we'd practice for 3 or 4 days in the local hall there at Castlereagh, and we get a new programme off for the season, we call it, because our season was starting again on that Easter Sunday, which would be a huge night for dancing, because people were starved for dancing. They hadn't danced for the 7 weeks of Lent. So Easter Sunday would be a huge night. Then you start the marquees on Easter Monday, and we always did a place called Ballinlaw over in Roscommon Easter Monday. You'd have 1,000 people there on Easter Monday night, Easter Tuesday. You would do, Seamus, no exaggeration, you would do 30 to 35 nights non-stop in marquees that time, after coming back. And they were lovely times, because the marquees seemed to be nice summer evenings also, and sometimes they'd have the size of the marquee down if the crowd was big enough. You'd have the cattle looking in at you. But they were great times, yeah. The marquees were huge at the time, huge, but unfortunately that's all gone now. But you see, the other thing about it, you had the marquee that time on every crossroads in Ireland, and the reason being that parochial people like the schools and the IFA and the farmers, the mackerel firm and church, they all ran these marquees, as you know, to raise funds for different things in the village, in the town. So there was a marquee in every crossroad in Ireland, and it was giving a lot of work to bands, a lot of work. That's another phase in life that's gone. But there were great times, and I used to love playing the marquees. The only thing that the change of facilities wasn't great, because you could roll up to a marquee from below in Wexford or Cork or Kerry, and to be in the middle of the country somewhere, and there'd be only cows in the field, and there was probably in the bloody marquee before you got in. You know how it was there before you, and you don't know where to change. Only at the back of the old bandstand, that old stage which would be a few planks up and a few beer barrels, and the drum kit would be up, and you'd be behind the drum kit with your white suit, trying to get your leg into the white suit and the socks, and people coming in from the buses, coming in. no change of facilities, and then if you had to go to where the gins, it was out the back with a bit of galvanised stuff. It wasn't a glamorous life, but you had to like it. I have to say that, sure, we got through it. There is no harm.
There was no such thing as mirrors with the little lights around it anyway.
I talk about glamour. They talk about the show business. See, people come in, as you very well know, come on stage and see up there with your loose suit, your white suit. But that time we were playing. That time was no relief bands when we started. We'd be playing 4 hours a night. It'd be 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, or 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, sometimes 5 hours a night. And you could have 8 or 9 or 1,000, 1,200 people in the place, and you'd be blowing there all night long for 5 hours non-stop. And you'd be lucky to get that cup of tea and the sandwich from in the tea room, wherever it to be. But talking about glamour, I remember playing with you some time ago, and the boys, and they cooked the meat for us, if you remember, on a shovel, a steak. They cooked a steak on a shovel for the Bogman's Ball over in Connemara. Do you remember that? I
do, there in Peacocks and Mam Cross.
and people won't believe that. The Bogman's Ball, they cooked the steaks on the shovel. No fine cutlery there, Seamus.
No, and the only complaint I had was I didn't actually. By the time we were finished on the stage, my steak was gone.
That's right. You were looking to get it, yeah. That was over in Mam Cross, over the road here from me. And you know, Seamus, that event, that Bogman's Ball went on for many years. Every year on a particular time, but it was very well supported. Michael had the celebrities and all down there. But remember, I played there once or twice, and yourself and the boys were there and doing your act also. We had a good crack. So we got the steak and the shovel anyway.
Well, you did. I didn't.
You were just gone. And I wouldn't mind, Seamus. I only lived in Galway, which is about 20 miles away. You had to drive all the way back to Wexford with nothing in your tummy.
Well, I remember going on one night at 5 o'clock in the morning there. 5 o'clock in the morning. That was, now, of course, any of our constabulary that might be, although most of them were at, so we don't have to worry about them. But, it went on all night. That was a huge night.
All night long. Yeah. And, and the thing about it, and, as you know, the thing about it is that you know, people say, like you were a very special act. Like you were John, you know, when you were doing the music, it wasn't too bad because I needed music for dance. But when the dance was finished, there were people like you to go up and entertain people. But people were tired that time. I'm sure they were half drunk at the time also. So the very awkward time to be going on 4 o'clock in the morning. That people sort of had it from 8 o'clock that evening, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. We'd arrived there at 8 o'clock and you'd be having a bit of crack there and all that. But,
that's right.
But
that's right.
4 o'clock, we'd be only hoping we'd be getting on at 4 o'clock. It was usually 5 o'clock when we were going on, so...
and did you get the bed? Could you stay over then? Or did you get the bed?
I think I got the couch or something there, so I was... at that stage, it was nearly time to go home anyway.
You know, talking about the couch, I remember going back to what I spoke to you there earlier on about, you know, young fellas going up and all the motorways of England. Going back to we used to stay in Victoria, Warwick Way in Victoria. There was a big guest house there owned by a Galway woman at the time. Nora was the name of the Mercer. But you'd have about maybe 5 or 6 bands staying there. And sometimes the band that was staying closer to the accommodation as I would get the beds. The other bands would be flipping waking up half the I remember coming home some nights and seeing fellas sleeping in the bath upstairs, like waiting for somebody to get out of the bed to give it them. And that's the truth. So, first up, best dress, Seamus.
Yeah. So you'd be inclined to get your gear down and get on the road very quick to get back to the B&B that night. Anyway,
you would. Yeah.
There was no hanging. There was no hanging around as such.
It wasn't as glamorous as people thought when they see it in the ballroom or with the crystal ball and going around and 1,000 people dancing around you. You know, you thought you were stars up there. Listening to the tentative shaking down the stuff would be patchy. You got to get back to base again. and most important thing of all was try to collect a few shillings afterwards. That nobody had gone home early with the money.
Or you didn't have to haggle. That was
I went with the haggling. I'd be great at haggling. I tell you, there was many a time we had to haggle. And the thing about it, before they would travel, the more we had to haggle. Fellas never thought you had to come from far into the country to make the few bobbers. But I suppose you probably know it yourself. No matter how good the night was, you could have a massive night. You know, you could have a bumper crowd. You never got the extra pound or two. But the night the crowd was down a bit, you'd always get the poor ones. Look, can you do any better than
that? yeah. There was never the bonus. There was always the little bit of
no.
It's like the great story
of having a great time.
Who's it? Was it Christy Moore? Was one night that some guy came up to pay Christy, and he said to him, he says, God, he says, Christy, it wasn't a great night. He says, will you do anything for me? So he handed Christy all the money, and Christy just put it in his pocket, and he said, well, God, he says, there's no use in the two of us having a bad night anyway. He says, so took all the money and went home.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is at the time, you'd be playing for the different committees around the country. We'll mention what organisation they'd be, but you'd be on a percentage, shall I say, maybe 50-50. If you got 50% of the take, and then you'd have maybe someone on the door watching who's going in the ticket office, you know. But then some of the smart guys in the committees that have 2 or 3 of the committee out in the field, like they'd be selling tickets. So you never got that. They'd say, sure, there was only so many in there last night. You know, in your heart and soul, there's about 200 more in there. But that's the tickets sold in the car parks and all. So they were going to get you either way, so they were.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there was cute boys out there. And, of course, then there'd be 1 or 2 of them. Then they'd say, I'll sort him out. I'll go in, I'll haggle with him now. And
that's right. I'll sort him out. Yeah. And you'd be there haggling at 3 o'clock in the morning. And your eyes hanging out, come on, just pay me, I want to go home. And you know, you'd have 5 or 6 guys out in the van, God love them, waiting after playing all night, sitting in the van on the cold night, waiting to go home to the families. And you'd be within an old marquee or an old hut somewhere, and you give us another 10 shillings, another pound, or whatever it was. Come on, you know, try to get the last out of them. Oh, they were merciless. Some of them, not all of them, sure.
You'd think it was a bullock they were trying to sell, or an old engine of a tractor or something.
They thought they were at the mark. So a lot of them were farmers, not around the farmers, God bless them. But a lot of them fellas on the community were, you know, coming from the farms and all that, and they ran the marquee in the local crossroad and made money for whatever it may be. But they were hard to deal with, I'll tell you, afterwards. And we won't mention the parish priest when he was running something.
Sure. Was it? What, I'm trying to remember a story. Was it? There was one story told of a parish priest, and he was he had a wad of money, and sure he was paying the singer, whoever it was, anyway, and sure your man, he gave him whatever was to be paid, and God, he says, Father, I'm a kind of, you wouldn't be able to go a little bit more with the money, he says, look, he says, and showed him the sole was coming off his shoe. So the parish priest done nothing anyway, and he just took the elastic off the wad of notes and handed your man the elastic, and he says, there, that'll keep that'll keep the sole on your shoe from now on. Anyway.
I remember playing in a hall in Galway. I was so young. God, I was only about 14 years or 15, on a cold winter's night in the hall. I was about in the snow, and we were very popular. Even that time, we were becoming popular in Galway. So it was a cold winter's night, probably a Tuesday night. There was no heat in the ballroom. And God, we were freezing on stage, and there was a miserable little tea room at the back of the bandstand afterwards. You know, they'd always give the band a cup of tea, and an old sandwich or something to get them home. But unfortunately, there was no cups in the place afterwards, and somebody made the tea in the back of some of the women made the tea in the back of the bandstand there, but no cups. You know what we had to drink the tea out of. But that time was no drink in the halls, no alcohol, just mineral bottles, cold mineral bottles. Pour the tea into a mineral bottle and drink it before we headed for home, like that, after playing 4 hours. You wouldn't get guys to do it today. That's a bit of a sandwich. I say, good luck now, lads. You're okay.
Well, I was reared on a farm myself, and I remember back when I was only a wee scuff of a chap, and there's actually photos of it as well, of where the boys used to bring the big brother, as they used to say, what was it, they were a kind of nearly like a 1 litre bottle of a glass bottle, and they used to make the tea with the milk and the sugar and everything and put it into it and bring out, each lad to get his own bottle of tea. And now, and you were getting a bit of that on that night, although, as you would say, you weren't too impressed by having to get the tea and put your milk and your sugar and try and get into the top of a little old mineral bottle. On
a cold winter's night, and then the frost, and then he'd come out in his old wagon, whoever was driving the wagon at the time, the band leader, and trying to skid home and get the tire up on the sidewalk, up in the ditch, so I get a bit of a grip going up a hill or something. We're painting a very grim picture of the business altogether. When that happened, I remember hearing the stories even before my time in the band, and I started, late 50s. But even before that, some of the bands that were on the road, the bigger, the big orchestras at the time, like before the show bands come in, and even when the show bands come in, guys coming from Cork and Kerry coming to parts of the west of Ireland, and getting the puncher on the way home. There was no all-night fitness jail. I remember fellas telling me stories. They used to have to take off the tire shavers and stuff it with hay.
Yeah.
To try and get back to where they were living that morning, and they could roll into town 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were tired, just got them home, stuffed with hay, because there was no other way of getting home.
No, for sure.
And people did that.
Yeah, there was nowhere to go. There was the service station's only a very recent thing. Whatever food you brought with you, or whatever, if you had a spare wheel, if you were lucky, and if you
And you see the situation with the motors, cars, that car, and the vans. It's like having a bicycle. So it's all the patches,
Yeah.
Everyone was fixing the puncher. That they're not fixing the puncher anymore. They just changed the tire or changed the tube. But that too was all patches. So you were getting punches all over the damn place with the way the roads were. you need about fucking. Oh, sorry.
You're speaking Irish there, I hear.
A bit of a rip there.
Apologies for that there, folks.
You need about 5 spare tires going to the gig, so you would.
You would. But even if you were looking for a bit to eat or anything, I remember actually coming back from a gig one night, and where was I'm not sure. I was somewhere in the back end of Kerry, I think, and we're starving, and we happened to see this chipper out in the middle of nowhere, right? And that was grand anyway. Myself and poor Eddie Cody, God be good with him. He's sadly departed since, but Eddie and myself got out anyway to go into this, well, if you could call it a chipper. It was a kind of an extension onto the side of a cottage, and in we went anyway, opened the door, and there was a bit of a counter in front of us, and so that was grand. This guy comes out anyway through this door on the other side of the counter, and we said to him, well, we're looking for chips, and a bit of chicken or burgers or whatever it was anyway, put in the order. And your man walks back in anyway, and sure, I noticed that he was wearing Wellington boots with turn down tops on him. And off he goes in this door, and he comes back out with a galvanised bucket with lard in it, the fat, and just heels it up into the fryer, and waltzes back into the kitchen again, or in behind this door anyway, wherever it was going. And myself and Eddie looked at each other, and we decided we weren't that hungry anymore, so into the van. And I'd say your man was probably coming back out, wondering where the two boys were gone, and we were skidding off up the road as quick as we could.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know that because it happened. It happened myself, and later on in life too, and a particular chipper, whatever part of the country it was, and you man with the Wellingtons, and you knock at the old door in the morning, you see him there lying on the couch, you get up, and just like that, and he came with the bucket, and you know what, crew beans. You know what crew beans are? Tell you a little what crew beans are, and a big bucket of crew beans, and threw them into the fire. We weren't long gone. We weren't that hungry anymore. Pigs. What are crew beans?
They're pig's feet, yeah. Pig's feet.
Yeah. Oh my God! Well, you want to be hungry now, so you.
I don't think McDonald's or Burger King are doing crew beans at the moment.
Oh my God! and then you'd be travelling on a long journey to a gig from Cork to Galway, shall I say? But the big thing that time was to make sure you had enough of fuel to get home, because all the filling stations closed. Well, there was no filling station at that time. It was just there were shops with a petrol pump out, so little grocery shops. And these people closed the grocery shops at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Yeah. And after that, there was no way getting. So you could arrive up below from Galway to Cork and have to come back again, and then realise you'd only a quarter tank of diesel or petrol, and there's no flipping place open to get that in the way back.
No.
So what would you do then? What would you do then if you're in the marquee? What you do then? You say to the guys in the marquee, the farmer, look, bring me back to the house. The green diesel, or the red diesel, he'd fill you up to get you home. So you would. The stuff he's using for the tractor, you're damn glad to get it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
You surely are. But sure, the smell in a lot of the vans, you had the smell of petrol or the smell of diesel. They'd have the gallon can or the whatever, the little jerry can, and it's full of diesel or full of petrol. Just to make sure that if you did happen to run out, at least you had something to keep you going.
That's right.
But the smell, sure, it'd knock you out.
Can we talk about the glamour, the other side of the business now? What it's like to be the glamour side of the business. But talking about the business, things have changed completely, and it's incredible the changes that I've seen in the business over the last 60 years. It's like life itself. Everything has changed. I had the great privilege of playing with a lot of big stars in my time. With Dan Campbell, I knew him, and went out to Branson and met him and played in the theatre with him. Andy Williams and Chubby Checker, who was over in Roy Orbison. Wow. I had the great Johnny Cash. I played with him over in Manchester with Joan Carter when he had the 40 Shades of Green and Ring of Fire. I did the intro for the Ring of Fire for him in the Carousel in Manchester. Well, these are the times that I still remember, the times that the fond memories, and all them people I've just mentioned there now. Unfortunately, I just realised they're all dead. Like Roy Orbison has gone. He was over and toured that with Pretty Woman. We did the tours and things like that. So all these great stars are gone now. So
that's a fair CV there, Mr. Johnny Carroll, to have to say. That you've worked with Roy Orbison, Johnny Cash. All those, Chubby Checker. You have a fair CV there to
twist again. Yeah. Worked from Chubby Checker and he was over, and there was Millie. Remember My By Lollipop? Millie worked with her, and a lot of them at the time. Just it's only now when I think of it, all these great artists are now gone. And at the time, we didn't think much of it. Like we did our job. We backed them and worked them while they were on tour, and we probably be the band on the night, and then you might do a few gigs with them. And they were nice people, but mostly that time, all the big acts came to the country that time in the 60s. They all played the dance halls because there was no big theatres like there are now for them. They wouldn't play dance halls anymore. Like, can you imagine Roy Orbison, Lord bless him, he was like went into a dance hall, he'd be in a theatre holding 4,000 or 5,000 people or something. But I'll never forget the night we played a Roy Orbison in the Arcadia Baller in Bray in County Wicklow, and it was like, oh my God, I remember the place was absolutely jammed in the road. There must be over 2,000 people, and the women were fainting on the floor, and Roy come on and sang his part. That pretty woman didn't open his mouth and say, good night or thank you very much, number into number, and walked off the stage again. But the place was absolutely mobbed. Yeah, I can just imagine. They were hard workers too. The Max that came at that particular time were hard workers. Jim Rees, I remember Jim Rees coming. See, them fellas they'd come and they do 2 gigs. They could be playing in Galway tonight, and they could be in Galway coming on at 10 o'clock at night. Then they have to be in Sligo at 11:30 to another gig. So they worked hard, the fellas that time. Like the night Roy Orbison was over. I remember Roy would do 2 gigs in the one night, get into the car and gone again to the next gig. You know, that's the way it was. And the roads weren't good back them times either. Oh my God, the roads were horrific, yeah. And the transport wouldn't have been that good. But I'd say Roy Orbison would have had better transport than we had with the band. he wouldn't be in the back with the gear with the drums on the bass guitar or anything like that. He wouldn't be putting a bit of hay into the tyres. But I'll tell you one thing, they were great guys. They were the real professional guys. You know, you could learn a lot from them. Like, you could learn enough from these guys. Even when Houston Wells joined the Premier Race, I remember Houston came from England, from the Cabaret Circle in England in the charts. But Houston was very, very professional. And I would have learned enough from watching Houston Wells perform and the way he could work a crowd and all that. These guys that came from that circuit were very professional people. They were used to the big time, shall I say. Yeah, but there's a reason that they got into the big time. Like, I mean, back then you didn't get there without a lot of hard work to get up to that level in the first place. Oh God, no. That time it was. I'd like to tell you, like, you'd be up in all the motorways, them 1 and them 6 in England for sweet all money. You know, at that time trying to make it, and it was hard. But when you made it, then you had to appreciate it and try and mind it at the time. A lot of people didn't mind it, unfortunately. Yeah. But it just came and went. But that's it, Seamus, and we're still here, and hopefully this coronavirus thing will finish very shortly. We'll all be back doing a bit again, and you'll be back making them laugh, and I'll be back and give them an old blast with the trumpet, and hopefully they'll be all around to hear it. Hopefully, please God, hopefully. Well, I'll tell you, it's an awful thing to have to say, Johnny, but we're getting very near to the end of the show, and I have Joe Harrington. He'll be pulling his hair out. He goes to the same hairdresser as myself. I've said it before. But there's been a number of people just to say a quick hello to you, Johnny, if you wouldn't mind saying hello back to them. I'm absolutely after loving this interview. Just great crack. And Nicola Arnold and the family are listening in. There's Sonny, there's Kaylee, there's Ian, and there's Aoife there in the county of Meath. They're listening in. My God. Yeah. So that's Nicola Arnold, and Maureen Burke is up there in Leitrim. If you could say a quick hello there to Maureen as well. Hi, Maureen, neighbour of me down the road, Leitrim. Maureen, I'm from Roscommon originally, so we're not too far apart. I'm in Galway now, but sure, we're still neighbours. Not too far away, anyway, not too far away. And Sabrina is actually in County Meath there as well. She said to say a quick hello. My God, yeah. And you're all over the world, Seamus. All over. Well, actually, would you believe it? Lev and Gloria Jackman are listening in over there in New Brunswick, and Lev, Gloria has just told me that Lev was actually outside listening and cracking up, laughing at our stories, or your stories more so, of the times on the road. Oh my God! What's the weather like there now? Where are they? Did you say? In New Brunswick, and really, it's 33 degrees over there. So they're. Oh my God! I'd swap with them.
Now it's a kind of more muggy weather, is what I'm told. So it's a kind of it's a little bit wet. It wouldn't be as cold as here. Now it'd be rather warm over there, you know. And
Jackman, I think is Jackman a Wexford name or a Waterford name?
It wouldn't be too far from it. Yeah, there's Jackmans living near myself.
Jackman's over there, and glad they're listening. That's lovely.
Yeah, and there's a gentleman called Tom McCracken is listening in. He's loving the chat as well. He says,
"Come on, Tom."
And of course, you know Annette Doyle. You've worked with Annette.
Of course, I know Annette very well. Lovely girl, lovely singer, Annette. Yeah, great girl.
Yeah, and great singer herself. Yeah, and but anyway, you know what, Johnny? That's where I'm going to have to let you go because I want to hear one more.
We'll do another program. So that's only half the story. That's only half the life. I've more to come. So tell the Jackmans all our good friends over there shooting. But you know, after striking me there, you said all these people listen all the words to your shows. It's amazing how loyal they are, because you see, people don't realise the time difference. These people, it's not just 8 o'clock in the evening there at night. These people at different times, and they get up just to listen to the show because of the time difference.
Yeah,
it's marvellous.
That's the fact. Like, I mean, we'd have people listening in from all over the world now. Like, I mean, well, actually, would you believe it? Gloria Jackman has said, "Could you find them some Irish roots?" So we'll have to do a little bit of work on that one.
I thought that. And I tell all these people that are listening, anyone that wants to find out my music, so they'll go on the YouTube, just put in Johnny Carroll there, hold on trumpet, they'll find some of my music there, so hope they'll enjoy it.
Well, we've always enjoyed it. Anytime I've ever listened to your music, I've enjoyed it, and all our listeners seem to enjoy it as well, because I always get great feedback when we play some of your music, Johnny.
So it's great, and it's great to be able to talk about it and have a laugh about it after all the years, and the hard times, and the fellas going home putting stuff in the hay into the tire and have to drive 120 miles on a tire full of hay. I just tell you one more story before I go. I remember some years ago going to a gig down there in Sligo, and Sligo is about 100 miles from me here at home in Galway. But I had a transit stand, and the old headwind, and she started boiling halfway to the gig anyway, and she was boiling over like hell, and the steam was coming out, and she didn't know what to do. Well, anyway, I got to the gig anyway, and I did the night, and how the name of God I'm going to get back up to Galway with 3 or 4 friends in the back of the wagon again. And you know what I had to do, Seamus?
What?
I had to go up into a farm yard on the way.
Yeah.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, I saw a big tar barrel, the 40-gallon tar barrel, the old tar barrels. So down out to the house where they used to hold the water off the roof of the house. Remember, Seamus?
I do, yeah.
I emptied it out. I took the seat out in the back of the wagon and threw it in with the gear. I shoved it in the back of the wagon and stored a bucket at the same time. And every pump and every stream from Galway to Sligo, I used to pull every 3 or 4 mile and fill it and keep the old radiator to get back to Galway. And she was steaming up all the way. And some fella got up in the morning, some poor devil, his bucket and his black tar bar was gone.
Poor old days, he was going to go thirsty and hungry.
Anyway, it's been great talking to you, and hello to all your listeners, and I hope they enjoyed the show. They didn't get much music, but they got a laugh out of it.
Hopefully. Actually, say a quick hello there to Michelle Orr as well. She's over there in Bradford in England. She's listening in.
How are you, Michelle? I remember playing them many years ago in Bradford. I know it well. Hopefully things go over there, Michelle, with you.
Hopefully. Well, that's where we have to go. We'll have to get you back on again in a few months.
You'll have to put me on earlier the next time. We start the show and we'll finish it together.
We surely will.
Anyway, it's been great talking to you, Seamus, and I appreciate it, and thank you very much. And once again, thanks to all the listeners for being so loyal to me down through the years. And as I did say, as the song says, Seamus, it takes people like you to make people like us, and that's basically it.
Well, thanks a million, Johnny. Thanks a million. And we're going to play out with one of your songs. Would you believe it? It's Magic Moments. And
we had a few of them on our time too, magic moments.
We sure did, Johnny, we sure did. And thanks a million for dropping by and having a chat, Johnny. Thank you.
God bless
thanks
you,
a million.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bringing you the best in country and Irish music. This is your station, irishcountrymusicradio.com.